we have a special caller. Caller, go ahead with your thoughts. You're on Peace News Now.
Well, good evening, Derek J.
Oh, good evening, James.
About the so-called New York City Mayor Bloomberg anti-gun public campaign commercials.
Yes.
One would actually think it's a Lorne Michaels SNL fake commercial production, for it amply demonstrates how two people can view the same images and have completely opposite political worldview. I mean, I know you and I.
Isn't that right? I mean, the commercial almost failed to convey its intention, right? That
it tells the reason why people should have the right to bear arms to defend themselves. It does it again. It's almost comic in its absurdity.
Yeah, that's how I viewed it.
But he's so hollowed and impressed with himself that he actually thinks the world would be a better place if nobody had guns. Well, unfortunately, guns exist just like drugs exist, and you can't wish them away by passing laws. They'll still exist. But that's about as much as I want to talk about that billionaire Marxist.
Yeah, we can 3D print guns now. I mean, we're at the point where there are guns made of plastic, there are knives made of ceramic, there are self-defense weapons, and people are going to have them. The politicians can't do anything about it. Technology has already empowered the individual past the point where legislation can do anything about self-defense.
No doubt about that. And just as I'm calling from a cell phone, which I would have never imagined having in the early 1990s when I was a Star Trek geek, pretty soon your cell phone will be a phaser if you like it to be. It's literally, we're in the brave new world. We just have to hope that our fellow human beings that have access to technology don't go around using and abusing it, which is why there's so many things you've addressed tonight that I should like to challenge you on. Okay. Because to address your legitimate concern about the big bad brother government bugging you,
yeah.
Well, respectfully, Derek J., I'd like to liken it to a bizarre woman that I just by chance ran into last night at the dog park in a lovely suburb of Phoenix, where I wouldn't think such nuttiness exists. But she was talking to this black gentleman who I'd come up to because obviously his dogs had taken a liking to me, and then they go back towards their owner, and I run into a conversation about this woman was having with this man about the Ebola virus and how she thinks it's big bad government created, and that they want to wipe out overpopulation, and they want to empower the pharmaceutical companies that have them in their back pocket to make them all rich.
Was she just speculating about this on a hunch, or did she?
No, she was dead serious, and the dude that was talking to her was talking to her, but not negating her argument at all. But I mean, like the good book of St. James commands me, and I tame my tongue because it's in public, and I wanted to be civil with a bunch of fellow dog owners. So I just wanted to take my 15-year-old 4-footed buddy for a walk and let him get out and then go home and have some dinner. But that's effing crazy for her to think that. And she has the right to vote. Which, by the way, real quick about the kid, I'd give him $250 just to tell him that nobody that is a teenager in the United States of America should have the right to vote. I think you should at least have to be 20 years old to have the right to vote. And no kid, as well-informed and educated and articulate that he may be, he doesn't have the right to vote, and that's good. And I don't want him to have to vote for another 4 years. But that's a story for another day.
That voting makes a difference?
Well, coming from an anarchist, no disrespect to you, you have your principles and beliefs. Of course it makes a difference.
I don't see any evidence of that. What evidence?
Okay, if Mitt Romney were in the White House right now, we would certainly have a different frame and intent of our government. Now, there are things he would be doing just like the new American Idol rock star Obama does, that actually I'm going to defend the man who I think is the most loathsome and contemptible phony that has ever been in the White House. And no, I'm not talking about his birth certificate. I believe he was born in the USA, just like you and me, but on an island. Anwar al-Awlaki was a murderer and a preacher of hate, and he was a member of a terrorist organization. And
what about
even
his son?
That man that... What about his son? Maybe you haven't heard me mention about that. If I were 16 years old, that means I'm sentient to know that if my dad who's preaching hate against the Jews in America, and we need to eliminate them, annihilate them, and get rid of the infidels. Well, if my dad, when I was 16 years old, had said that kind of Shiite, I would have gone and borrowed one of his guns. I would have borrowed one of his guns and capped him. That would be my duty.
Okay, but you don't think that you should be allowed to vote at that age, just pointing that out.
No, if I were 16 years old and my dad was a preacher of hate, say like if my dad was Hitler...
You should be allowed to kill your dad, but you shouldn't be allowed to vote.
No, that would be my duty. You should, if you need, I've already said that preachers of hate, like Hitler, if somebody just waxed him in the 20s, for God's sakes. Like, I mean, if somebody went around my neighborhood preaching that the Jews are the cause of all the world's problems, I'm not a gun toter. I said that Alawaki's son knew his daddy's a gun toter. I wouldn't wax him, but like I have before when I've run into people with swastikas on their arms and legs. Literally,
So what do you think about the right to be innocent until proven guilty, or the right to a fair trial?
That's in the court of law. And, okay, we're talking about civil law, not people that are you not listening to me? He was literally a dedicated and he's pro-war against the United States. He and his counterculture clubbers are from the Southwest Asia.
Should the Nazis have been tried for their crimes?
Well, they were after they were finally surrendered.
Right, and I think that was the correct decision. I think they should have been tried.
Right, but they also, if the Roosevelt administration and the Hoover administration and the Coolidge administration and the Harding administration, okay, the Nazis...
If the Nazis should be tried, then terrorists today should be tried.
No, after the war was done and they all surrendered and we were captured, they were tried. These people are avowed enemies of the United States. And by the way, about 9/11...
How do you know until you try them?
Come on, dude.
How do you know until you collect the evidence? I mean, this is a serious question. Well, why shouldn't the people be presented with the evidence that these people have committed a crime?
I'll put it the other way. I'll finish my story to what I said to the lady before I tamed my tongue.
Oh, sure.
Is that I don't believe Hitler's in the White House. I literally said that, and in spite of what I might think about him, one way or the other, about many things, and I was saying this because I was a black dude with her, literally, and 95 out of 100 black people in the United States of America voted for Obama. But that wasn't why I was taming my tongue, by the way. I was just trying to be respectful to the woman saying, no, I don't think Hitler's living in the White House, and I don't think that people are going to want to commit mass murder for money. And that's all I said to her in respect.
They already do. It's called the Army.
Okay, oh my God. We are the most, speaking of benevolent dictator, that retard that called in Sunday, God love him.
Wasn't that strange?
Speaking of that, okay, I don't believe, we have a most benevolent empire ever, if we're an empire, there, Jay.
Benevolent?
You're an anarchist, I'm not. I'm not a statist either, okay? But
yeah, but dropping bombs on people is not benevolent.
Barack Obama is ordering the drone death strikes of somebody that isn't a terrorist. Okay, yes. If I believe Barack Obama were a murderer, which is what you're calling him by literally,
yes.
Well, it would be my duty to take him out, like I suggested many a time. It was the duty of millions of...
I don't believe that way. I don't believe that way. I don't believe in confronting murderers with violence. I do,
and that's the only way to get rid of them.
And one could make a strong argument for that, and I'm willing to listen to that.
Somebody that preaches that you don't have a right to life has forfeited his own.
Well, some people make that argument, and quite strongly, and I recognize that. But I hope for another solution, one of peace and reconciliation. That doesn't involve...
Are you familiar with the concept of pipe dreams?
With pipe dreams? You think that's a pipe dream?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Hold your thoughts, James. I'll keep you on the line. This is Peace News Now. You can call in on Skype. Peace News Now. Didn't seem to work. I wasn't hearing you.
Derek, I'm not going to bash any one of your fellow LRN network hosts. That's the only reason why I had not wanted to say what I said, not knowing that I was on air, because I don't actually like smearing people and making fun of people without them being able to respond.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
And so that's why I asked you respect, and then I found out, oh my God, that was televised? Anyway.
Yeah, that's happened with more than one person. I should be more clear about that with callers.
It doesn't matter. Okay, right on, dude. It does. Are you familiar with what Mahatma Gandhi wrote? And not to mention the way he wrote it, "Dear Friend," to Hitler in August of 1939. And
No.
if you know what happened in early September 1939, if you know your history,
Yeah.
it's like the biggest invasion, and the most consequential invasion in human history.
Yeah, my people,
Yeah.
Poland.
Can you please stop being so mean to the Jews, and can we not just all get along? And that's what he did. And for the 6 years that the Third Reich murdered 50 million people between the time he wrote that letter and the time Hitler finally topped himself, and the Germans stopped following a dear leader's commands, and they all surrendered.
It's
50 million people died.
right, and it's tempting to believe. It's tempting to believe that if a person were to assassinate Hitler at any point before the invasion of Poland, that they would have been doing a good thing. And I get that, but like the world is full of what ifs, and we can use our imagination to dream up other alternative solutions.
Right.
I don't think.
Okay,
that
right. The imagination and dream.
I don't think assassination is a long-term solution, James. Honestly, I think it distracts people.
I'm not saying.
They don't see the principle behind it. If Hitler were to be assassinated before the Holocaust happened, all those Jews who were, or all those Germans, excuse me, who were in their hypnosis about government power, would just cling to the next authoritarian. Don't you believe that?
No, absolutely not. Because the authoritarian that took over after they surrendered was called the United States of America. And West Germany, West Germany is a beautiful, free country now, and it is prosperous. And it was, and they immediately realized that, Derek J., because my dad lived there after the war. They all realized what they answered for their crimes. They all knew they were all guilty, and there was no excuse for what they did, but they never did it again. Yeah. And again, they never went on the warpath again, but right across the river in East Germany were a mass murderer that was in cahoots with Hitler in September of 1939, who got away with his crimes and lived for another 12 years. That was a Stalinist authoritarian dictatorship where tyrannical deeds and mass murder continued. But it didn't happen where we were, where my dad was and his friends. It didn't happen at all. At all. And they prospered. And if you ask me, by the way, Germans haven't answered for their crimes yet.
Hold that thought. We're coming back. Welcome back. This is Peace News. This is our final segment, so make your calls now. We still have one caller on the line, James in Arizona. Is going to give us a lesson in history, tell us why it would have been the right thing to do to kill baby Hitler. Or maybe just stop him once we saw that he was trying to kill and genocide a whole population of people. There's a fine argument to be made to that end, but I don't think that's a good solution. I think that if people were to assassinate Hitler before he invaded Poland, that it would have been a misguided death, that people would have been confused about the real reasons behind that, and they would have just clung to the next authoritarian. But James, you don't agree.
Of course not, because I just, like example of post-Germany 1945, that is a definitive example of, I'm not even going to say anything negative about your argument other than that.
Okay.
I just want you to check out like what Mahatma Gandhi did for 6 years after he wrote his letter to Dear Hitler, Dear Friend. He said, "Dear friend, for God's sakes, stop being so mean to the Jews."
Because that's like the strategy I try to take, and I get a lot of criticism for that. Like trying to reach out to my aggressors, the people like the police who have pepper sprayed me and given me concussions, and I try and reach out and be friends with them. Some people think I'm totally foolish for that. Like I should treat these people like attack dogs, you know, basically like they're people who are going to hurt me if I go anywhere near them. They cannot be reasoned with. I should not reach a loving hand towards them. I shouldn't offer to buy them coffee or breakfast or have a human discussion. You know, I don't want to live like that. I do want to have peace.
I totally dig what you're saying, Derek.
Yeah.
Derek, I totally dig what you're saying. But the thing is, I'm a man of peace and goodwill towards men of the like sentiments as well. Now, the cops you're talking about, I guarantee you they aren't evil and malevolent like the person I was talking about.
Right. They're not
and
Hitler.
The counterculture clubbers, that he had like 500,000 fanatics before he became Chancellor of Germany. And it was not because of the Versailles Treaty, and this is something I'd like to discuss with another host, because the Versailles Treaty didn't cause the late 1920s depression, or the 30s that continued into the 1930s, which enabled the Nazi regime to come to power. He was like a Ron Paul of Germany in the 20s. Everybody knew who he was, and in a country of like 90 million people, he had 500,000 fanatics, which meant he lost terribly, just like the Libertarian Party does every 2 or 4 years. They get like 2-3%.
The disease is
but let me finish.
The idea that...
Let me finish.
All right, go on.
The important point is, when the economy crashed, he all of a sudden was getting 30% of the vote, and the Nazi Party could stunt the Parliament of Germany. Every vote they could, because it was a parliamentary system, nothing ever got done until finally Hindenburg gave up and said, fine, well, let him be Chancellor. And then 2 months later, he was literally dictator for life. I mean, it was so tragic. My point is, the German people weren't inevitably going to be mass murdering, dog following, sheeple, or whatever you want to say, and post-war proves it. Okay,
yes, they were, because they still consented to his
apologist.
authority. They still consented to his authority even after he became a dictator. At any point, they could have said,
right.
No, I don't respect your authority. You're illegitimate. I'm not following your orders. They could have done that at any moment. But the fact is, they did believe it. They are lapdogs for authoritarians, and they would have been no different had Hitler been named John. They would have followed any authoritarian off of a cliff, because they believe in statism. They believe it's legitimate.
You don't know what you're talking about.
This is what Americans are. This is what Americans are doing today, James.
You don't know how good the SA were and the Gestapo were at doing what they were doing, of which doesn't exist in the United States of America, and I can prove it by you being on public radio right now. Okay, you wouldn't have existed in 1933 or for the rest of the German Reich. You couldn't have spoken freely like you are against the government. You would have been murdered. Okay, like I said to that dummy, Dachau was open like 2 months after Hitler was appointed chancellor. And it stayed in business and it only got way worse. They killed people, okay, and they disappeared people. You're not going to disappear tonight after ranting about the government being an anarchist. Nobody is, and the cops that mess with you, they're not evil. Like the SA that was 500,000 strong were.
Well, what do you think about this terrorist watch list?
I'm not, thank you. Because I'm about as worried about being on a terrorist watch list as I am about contracting the Ebola virus. And yes, there are idiots and criminals that work for the government. But anybody that's spying on James the Wit on his computer and wasting more than like 30 seconds of U.S. taxpayer money spying on me is completely retarded. And yes, they are spying on people. That 9/11 hasn't happened again, might you consider, Derek, because we have metadata, computers that are spying on people that think that Osama bin Laden was really cool and I wish it would happen again.
Oh, really? How many terrorists has the government caught?
And they like to keep that stuff secret, for sure.
Why?
And
Why
you don't think they haven't caught do you think they have not caught terrorists that do want to see
I don't.
Somebody...
No, not a single one.
Well, okay.
If they had one, parade them around. Show off. Hey, we got one. Look, a terrorist, guys. Okay. Look at all the freedoms you gave up.
If I were to name one, what would that do to your argument? Destroy it? Or would it just like maybe support mine a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead, name one.
Okay. Anwar al-Awlaki.
Okay, and what evidence do you have that he was a terrorist?
I'm just going to go on instinct. I don't think Barry Obama is a murderer. And I do believe that he saw the...
Going on instinct is not an argument, James.
No, I can't prove that Anwar al-Awlaki...
What evidence do you have?
I said faith. Instinct. I don't believe, as much as I loathe him in the White House, is a murderer and orders a drone strike on a person that isn't guilty of the information he's been... I'm
going to do a little bit of elementary research here and go to Wikipedia. We can learn about Anwar al-Awlaki together. He was killed September 30th, 2011. He was an American and Yemeni.
Yeah.
He was an imam and Islamic militant. The U.S.
Right.
government officials said he was a senior talent recruiter and motivator who was involved in planning most terrorist operations for the Islamic militant group Al-Qaeda. With a blog, a face page, and Al-Qaeda magazine Inspire, and many YouTube videos, the Saudi news station Al Arabiya described him as the bin Laden of the Internet. After a request from the U.S. Congress in November 2010, YouTube removed many of al-Awlaki's videos from its site. However, al-Awlaki's influence continues to be apparent in the West and internationally. And, okay, so that's what we've got, some YouTube videos. Does that guy deserve to be killed?
Like I said in my opening remarks, two people can see the same images and come up with completely different responses.
Well, I'm not saying
now,
he's some
I happen to believe all those accusations.
Let's say they're all true. Let's say they're all true. What should happen to him? Should he be given a trial?
Have you ever heard a homily by one Imam Anwar al-Awlaki? That's what Catholics call when the priest has his turn to say, talk about whatever, after we read the Gospels.
No, I've
never gone to a Catholic church and heard a priest say, death to the infidels, death to the Jews, death to anybody that doesn't agree with us, and death to anybody that doesn't want to live by Sharia law.
I'm willing to admit that this guy is a terrorist. I just think he should have gotten a trial and people should know the facts. And that his 16-year-old son shouldn't have been killed without a trial. I mean, is that so controversial? He was a guy born in Denver. He was killed by a CIA drone strike.
I don't care where he was born. I honest to God don't care where a piece of human refuse was born. I don't think it entitles you to any special protections when, again, he is the one that declared war on the United States of America. And yeah, the United States of America is sending a message to him and his Al-KKK buddies. That's what they are. They're Al-KKK of Southwest Asia. They're a bunch of racist, xenophobe, religious nut jobs that, again, since we've last talked about these a-holes, they've moved northeast in Iraq and then now have control of a dam, and they've wiped out some Kurds that are actually pro-American. The guys literally dressed in black, like freaking KKK members.
You mean like the
police
in the U.S.?
White. Okay, I don't have such a dark view of cops. I don't think that they're...
They do wear black, though, don't they?
I'm just, for a second, I'm thinking Scottsdale police. Do they wear black? I guess. And some of them are ginned up like it's a military state, too. I agree with you. I saw one wearing a bulletproof vest in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
We have another interesting point of agreement that I wasn't aware of, that you don't care where a person was born. Neither do I. I think humans all have the same rights, no matter where you're born. It's not the Constitution that gives you rights. They are inherent. Thank you for the call, James.